Hey, Kris Raines, thanks for taking a little time to talk to some of my classes. Excited, that you came back after so many years, and maintain that relationship with me. And so, thank you for taking the time. The first question that I have for you is, would you mind introducing yourself to my classes?
Yeah, not a problem. Thanks for having me. My name's Christopher Raines. I graduated Ranken back in 2011. I am currently working for Worldwide Technology as a quality engineer. I've been with Worldwide for 4 years. This coming summer will be my 5th year with the company.
Nice. What does a quality engineer do?
So a quality engineer is kind of a hybrid between your manual QA testers and your developers that develop the apps. We help kind of bridge the gap of the code that we work with and the tests that we do so that those tests are automated. So kind of your repetitive processes that you would constantly do, we get into the code and we basically automate that so that you don't have to keep doing that each time.
Okay, so you write code, but you also mentioned a QA or quality assurance, and can you break that down? What does quality assurance do?
So quality assurance is responsible for making sure that any of the features or criteria from the customer or client are met based on their needs of their app. So we basically just make sure that the code that the developers write functions to the expectations of the clients. So take, for example, a login. We would validate what a successful and unsuccessful and then other types of attempts to log in would be.
And so you're just making sure, I mean, it sounds like that you're just making sure the app functions the way the client would expect it to.
Correct.
And so finding bugs, right? You're trying to find bugs in the software, and it sounds like that's a typical QA, right? QA is locating bugs, but your role is not only locating the bugs, but fixing the bugs.
Inside the test, yes.
Cool. Inside the QA testing.
Correct.
And so, can you talk about Worldwide Technology? What's the technology stack? Like, what languages are you working with?
So Worldwide operates with a bunch of different clients. So at any given point, we can be in any type of tech stack. We don't have a specific tech stack that we work with. A lot of times we work with the client's tech stack. So we've been in React apps, React Native apps. We've been inside of iOS, Android. We deal with APIs from the back end. We deal with messaging services. I mean, we're kind of all over the gambit, just depending on what the client has and what the client needs from us.
And so, does that mean you have to be familiar with all these different languages?
You don't necessarily have to be fully familiar with it, but you have to have the ability to basically read, understand, and problem solve. So there might be a tech stack that you get put onto a project that you've never worked with, but as long as you know the basis of like the coding technologies, you can apply that to that tech stack and be able to go with it.
That's
So
impressive.
they do allow opportunities for learning in between that. So it's not like you're just thrown to the wolves, but you do have to be kind of universal at times.
All right, so we're back. So that's impressive. It sounds like you have to be familiar with a lot of different technologies and be able to, like you said, read these different languages, diagnose what's going on, troubleshoot, and identify problems and fix problems.
Yep.
That's impressive. I mean, that's I imagine it. You've been out in the industry for a while, so you probably can't do that on day one.
No, it definitely takes some time. And like I said, multiple years of doing it.
Yeah. So again, you graduated in 2011, so you've been out there for 12 years.
Correct.
Nice. So how many jobs have you had in that time?
Since graduating Ranken, I have had four. I started at the tech call center that Ranken actually set me up with at my time there. And then as soon as I graduated, I got a job at a hosting company, worked there for about 2 or 3 years, went to a tech company that dealt with public safety software, and was a tech support there for 2 years before transitioning to a QA role for my final 3 years, and then transitioned as a QA and then now as a QE for Worldwide.
So you went to school for learning, code and coding, and it doesn't sound like your first job was dealing with code.
It was not. So my career has kind of come full circle. I graduated Ranken with the Internet and Web-Based Technologies degree, but my first job was as a tech support for a call center. The hosting company, I was tech support and then a Windows engineer for a short time before going into a company that I was a tech support for that kind of brought me back into the coding world. That company dealt a lot with SQL databases and needing to be able to query data for the public safety avenues that we were working for to provide report statistics. So I had to, write T-SQL almost on a daily basis in order to be able to pull that back. And that's
so
what kind of got me
after
back
graduation,
into
how long was it until you started writing code?
Probably 4 years.
Okay, so about 4 years, and you've been out there, call it 12, so you've been writing code for 8 years now.
Correct.
Nice. And so during the 4 jobs, have you had coding developer type questions during the interview process, or what has the interview process at these different companies been like?
So I don't recall specific questions regarding like the coding. It's more questions around problem solving, like how would you go about doing these things? Again, because a lot of the coding jobs that we do at Worldwide can vary depending on the tech stack. From a quality engineer, it's kind of hard to narrow in and ask a specific language because we deal with so many. If we were a specialized developer like we do have, that might be easier, but a lot of it's just problem solving.
So why did you choose this industry?
So I chose the industry because I kind of like the challenge and the changing aspect of it. I like to do something different every so often because I feel like I kind of get stale. But in the coding and especially in the role that I'm in with so many different tech stacks and so many different platforms, it's the same type of skill set, but it's different problems. So it kind of keeps things fresh, keeps things changing, keeps you kind of engaged.
Yeah, it's one of those things that anybody, as they're getting into this industry, is like the first thing you learn about the industry is that the only constant is change.
Yep.
And you're a living example of that. It's like there's probably new things you've never seen every single day, I'm guessing.
Yep.
And so you just have to learn how to think on your toes and figure it out.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in your experience, are there any software projects that that you've worked on over the years that kind of stand out as like cool or fun?
So I don't think I can go in too much detail with it, just because of NDAs. So I won't name drop anything. But I mean, there was one project that we did that was kind of different than most. From a client perspective, it was more on a personal level than a corporate or a business level, and that was kind of fun because it was a smaller group of people building something to help others versus kind of like your chain applications and things like that.
So you just enjoyed the small use cases, like, hey, I'm going to build a small app for a specific purpose, and it's gonna help these people out.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I kind of took that at one point and worked with one of the other QAs and developers to kind of do a mini project in between my projects at Worldwide, to kind of help a bowling tournament that I did. We created a terminal-based app that you put in names into a spreadsheet. It read from the spreadsheet and then created lane assignments for 3 or 4 games. And then you basically could just tell everybody, hey, you're on this lane, and this lane. So we did all that in JavaScript and TypeScript. So that was pretty fun.
And so that was like a little side thing you did for you obviously like bowling, and so you were trying to automate a process of lane assignments and setting up these different games and who's in what lane.
Yep.
And you took kind of what you learned on the job and put it into a passion project.
Yep.
That's fun. That's fun. So what's in the day? What's a day in the life of Kris Raines like? I mean, what time do you clock in? What's your job like?
So typically I clock in at 7. I prefer to kind of work earlier in the morning than later in the evening. I just find that I'm a little bit more, motivated towards the beginning of the day versus the end. And the good thing about Worldwide is we have flexible hours that we can work as long as we're not impeding our clients' needs and we're available during our clients' main operating times. So with me being on at 7 o'clock, I kind of get on before most of the clients start their day, so I can kind of do some of my admin-like tasks that I need to for the projects. And then throughout the day, I'm available to do the day-to-day operations and meetings and anything like that.
Are you working from home?
Correct. I am in Worldwide's virtual office.
5 days a week?
Yes, sir.
Nice. How do you like working from home?
So I like working from home because it does give a little bit more flexibility. There might be days that you have a meeting or you have a problem that kind of runs past what your normal hours would be, and you need to dedicate time to make sure that you kind of get that resolved. And being from home, you eliminate the drive, you eliminate traffic, and you can pretty much stay on and stay focused and engaged to get that done quicker. And then when you're done, you're done.
Well, I'm jealous. I gotta drive into work every day. I gotta waste an hour of commuting every single day. That's cool. Okay, so you're clocking in at 7, and you're getting some administrative tasks done, and then what?
So then we basically start our normal day-to-day operations, which is the development and testing of the features. So we basically have like tasks that we have to do in order to develop code. We break a feature out into smaller pieces. We write code for that, and then we validate that that functionality is working and integrates with other components. So that process for me is looking over the criteria, testing the actual code that the developers write, noting any defects in the code or the functionality, and then time permitting is when we write the automated tests. So we take what I did manually and then we turn that into code so that we can then run that in our pipelines later.
So you have a task list of tasks to complete, and what's that called? A Kanban board or something like that?
So we use Jira.
Jira.
So it's a Jira board.
Jira board.
Yeah.
And so you're agile methodology kind of thing. And so
Yep.
how long, like you have sprints?
It really depends on the projects.
Yeah.
Projects are different. It depends. Some of them have sprints. Some of them have feature epics that they have, and then we just basically have like month deadlines type thing to get a specific feature done by.
And so
it really
if you have a job board of tasks to do, like what's a number of tasks you might get done in a day or a week? I mean, on an average week, how many tasks might you complete?
Myself, it's probably like 6 or 7 tasks a week, and it really just depends on size. If we can do a whole bunch of smaller ones, obviously more. Larger ones that touch a bigger, feature component of an app would take a little bit longer.
And
But
so
on average,
this
about
process that we're describing, that takes up your whole day. That's your work day.
Yep, you get that, and then meetings, and then any of, like I said, the admin tasks. So it's kind of a juggling act to make sure that everything that's needed for the client is handled.
So you're working from home. You typically clock in at 7. What time do you try, and I say try, and clock out?
I try to normally clock out like 3:30, 4 o'clock.
3:30, 4 o'clock. Cool. You still living in the St. Louis area?
Yep, I'm out in O'Fallon, Missouri.
Okay, not too far. What advice would you give to be successful at Ranken? And part of that is to land a job, like land your first job out of Ranken.
So I would say that my, advice would be to really take to heart the labs that Ranken provides. That, I think, is the biggest thing that helped me, is the hands-on piece, the labs, the tests that, hey, solve this solution any way that you can. That is crucial, because that is what the industry is you're presented a problem, you might not know the answer, but it's your responsibility to figure out that answer.
So take
So I
the
would say
hands-on work seriously.
exactly.
Yeah, right on. Another thing is, you're working for a premier employer in the St. Louis area, Certainly a lot of people would love to get a job at Worldwide. Certainly a lot of my current students would love to get a job at Worldwide Technology. What would be your advice, because I will tell you, I know a student looking at you right now that has told me it is my goal to work at Worldwide Technology. What would be your advice to that student if they want to work at Worldwide?
I would say really focus on challenging yourself for difficult problems. And I don't want to say that to scare anybody, but the harder the challenge, the greater the reward when you figure that out. And at Worldwide, what we do is we solve hard problems for our clients. And that's what I find satisfying about the role that I'm doing, is they are entrusting us to find these difficult problems, navigate these difficult tech stacks that, aren't easy to pick up, and run with it. So I would say
feeling,
take pride.
Right? It's a rewarding feeling when you solve that problem.
Absolutely.
Find enjoyment in the process.
Yep.
Because solving those problems aren't easy. I like the advice. Do you think, now that you've been in this for 12 years, you think you'll be in it for another 12, 15? You're going to be here when you retire? Or do you see yourself maybe someday in the distant future trying something else out?
I think I'll be here for a while. I don't know too far what the future holds, but like I said, specifically in the position that I'm in at an employer like Worldwide, they give me every opportunity to keep growing. I don't foresee myself, hey, JavaScript, you're the expert, you're the best in the world at it, you're done. That's never going to happen. It's always going to be a new challenge. And just to highlight, I think one of the biggest challenges that the industry is going to see is AI. Specifically in the development aspect, knowing how to use AI and, leverage that to assist you is going to be key. So that's just yet a new challenge that we have to figure out.
Yeah, they actually provide GitHub Copilot education accounts. And so my students, literally, some of the things that we're in here doing, they're like asking, built into Visual Studio Code, there's a Copilot, and you're like asking it questions and getting that assistance. And so several of my students have chosen, once they learn the fundamentals of coding, to then leverage those tools.
That's good, because that's what a lot of industries are going to be looking for here.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of the termination of my questions. I got to say, man, I'm impressed. I didn't know nearly what you're doing to this detail, so I'm impressed with your career trajectory, and I just want to say congratulations, man. That's awesome.
Well, I appreciate it, and like I said, I owe a lot of it to Ranken, because the hands-on was what was key. I don't think without the hands-on I would have been as successful as I am today.
Well, you're just being nice, but you've earned it, so congratulations. So yeah, right on. Kind of like open it up to my class, Anybody got any questions for Kris? Steven?
So right now we're working on a project that has a front and back end. How did you tackle that problem where you had to connect the back end to the front end?
Did you hear the question? I can repeat it.
Yeah, go ahead and repeat it. I did not hear it.
So they're working on a full stack application right now, and for the first time, right? So they learned the front end, then they learned the back end. Now they're tying it all together. It's built in JavaScript, so it's the MERN stack. And so, do you remember the first time you kind of tied in the front end to the back end, and how did you tackle the problem, and how did you tackle the learning that was involved? Did I basically get that right, Steven?
So that was actually at my previous job before Worldwide, the company that did the application for the public safety software. It was an ASP.NET front end Windows desktop app with a T-SQL backend. So once I kind of got into the tech side and specifically the QA side, I had to learn like how they kind of communicated together. I've not programmed anything from the ground up to do like a web face or an interface and then tie it to the back end. But I have written automated tests to leverage functions to call data to actually fill in front ends. So it's been a while, but I mean, that's kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis is we start out small and then we tie it all together.
Good deal. Good question. Talk about a little bit more for me, like unit testing and the different kinds of testing that exist, because we write a lot of code, but we don't write a lot of unit tests.
Okay. So specifically at Worldwide and on our projects, a lot of the unit tests are written by the developers in TDD, test-driven development. So as they write their code to do a feature, they're also writing the test to validate what they wrote. And a lot of times the unit test is just designed to make sure that a specific input is of a specific value. Like it accepts an integer or a string, and what happens if you try to pass it something else. Where the QEs kind of come in is we do more of the acceptance and the integration pieces. So we start writing the test to actually use real data. So like take, for example, a login. We would write a test to pass a username and a password that is in the database and expect it to pass. We would pass it something that's not in the database and expect it to fail. We would try to enter numbers in a username that might accept just, alpha characters, things like that.
So let me see if I can high level that. So the developers themselves write some very basic unit tests, some basic tests. And then your job is more, instead of just testing against data types like the developers are testing that it's a string or an integer, you're going to say, okay, you're passing some basic tests, but now let's use some real data and actual, here's 50 cases of usernames and 50 cases of passwords, and we're expecting some to pass and some to fail. And these are real use cases of what would be used on a day-to-day.
Correct.
Yeah. So would you recommend developers learn to write some basic unit tests?
I would. I have found, and I know our teams have found that to be very successful up front because it helps catch if something were to change or to break in the development process.
Yep.
Because once we complete it, test it, if we go to make code change in that area and we break something, the test will fail and say, hey, this is no longer doing what we thought it would. It kind of helps get us ahead of problems.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. Other questions for Kris? Yep.
How was the interview process at Worldwide?
How was the interview process at Worldwide?
So the interview process at Worldwide was a pretty good one. They're very thorough in their process. There's multiple rounds of interviewing. Your typical, meet the person, kind of, get a feel for, how they are, what their experience is, and then they set you with specialists in the area. So like for me, I was put in front of their QAs and their QEs, and they were the ones that would ask me the interview questions based on their experience and what the company was looking for. So it is a personalized process, speaking to the people who are actually in the roles.
Sounds like a couple rounds, maybe like 1, 2, 3 rounds, something like that.
I think I went through 3 when I was hired.
Okay. Good question. Another question?
As someone that has a coding job currently, how would you rate the effectiveness of a help desk job right out of the college?
Okay. How would you rate the effectiveness in a help desk job right out of college?
So that's where I started, and I equate it to basically getting your foot in the door. A lot of places look for not only skills but experience. And the only way you can get experience is to basically be in the industry. Even if the industry that you want to be in is developing or coding, as long as you're working with technology, you can get your foot into the door for other things based on your skill sets. So if that is your opportunity to get into the field, I would say that it's very good.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, just as a person who fields that question a lot as a teacher, um, most students' primary goal is to write code. And so my advice typically is work your tail off applying for developer entry level jobs. And most students, not all, but many students, if that's their goal, right? Most students are able to succeed in that goal. However, if you find yourself working your tail off and not finding that first entry level job, because that is a hard one to get, let's just say you're 3 months out and you've been working your tail off and you're just not landing it, then any step in the right direction, like a help desk job is a step in the right direction, right? Then absolutely you want to step in the right direction anytime you can. So Kris had that help desk job before he even graduated. So he took a step in the right direction. I mean, what were you doing before help desk?
Before I went to Ranken and was doing help desk, I was working as a cook in a kitchen.
Right, right. So any technology related job is a step in the right direction, which helped him take the next step and the next step. And he got a developer degree, so it's like, hey, I want to write code. I'm working help desk. Next thing you know, you're writing SQL code. You're taking steps.
And as a follow-up question, what would be a good number of years to have before trying to get a developer job? Like, say, like a year, 2 years
So-
in help desk?
So then the question is, how many years might you wait to try and get the developer job? If you're working a help desk, how long do you wait to the next?
That's kind of a hard one. I don't have an answer for that per se, because it really just depends. I mean, unfortunately, with what COVID did, there was kind of a downward in the industry. A lot of places felt it. The tech industry as a whole felt it during COVID. Now, I think that's going to go back up, but I don't have a time frame for when I think would be a good job for that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of on a person-to-person level.
You're absolutely right. It's on a person-to-person basis. The one thing that I would add, and I know this is for Kris, but again, I've got a little tidbit too. When a company invests in you, they're taking a risk on you. So to be courteous of them, suffice it's a decent job, like you're not working a terrible, terrible, terrible job. They take a risk on you. So you want to be respectful of that. And so, it might be disrespectful to take a job and then just quit in 2 months, is what I'm saying.
Right.
So a general kind of rule of thumb is, they're taking a risk in you and investing in you. So to let that investment, quote unquote, pay off and for you to learn as much as you can, about a year is a pretty common thing to work for a company for a year at minimum, because they're investing in you. And so, as a payback to them for that payback and investment, that's a general, give them a year before you jump ship. But it is, Kris has been out there 12 years. He's had 4 jobs. That's pretty normal. You work at a company for 2 to 3 years and then you go somewhere else. That is the norm, right? So kind of on the minimum side of that is about a 1 year, 1 to 3 year. Good question. Steven?
Is it a fun experience when you move to different jobs because you're experiencing new things?
Yeah, how do you like the experience of going from job to job? Is it enjoyable to experience new things?
It can be, but it also can kind of be scary because, like you said in the last question, is they are taking a risk and an investment in you. So, obviously, you as an individual, you want to kind of help live up to that, expectation that they have. And going from job to job can be a little scary, but at the same time, it's a breath of fresh air at times. New scenery, new problems. So I'd say it's probably about, you know, a 50-50 for me personally.
Sure. Good question. Any other questions for Kris? Well, I think you did a great job answering those questions, and you know, I just want to thank you for your time and good catching up a little bit.
Appreciate the time. Thank you, Evan.
All right, man. Take care.
Yep, you too. Bye.